Good afternoon, everyone. I am Melissa Miller, host of The Chosen Heroes, and thank you so much for joining me here today for our next episode with special guest Dr. K. And let's kick off the week in review with Targeted Justice News.
Dr. Suarigo, MD, was allegedly a sex slave and a CIA operative. Her story is so detailed that it would be difficult to fabricate. In the 80s and 90s, she was allegedly forced into the beds of Johnson, VP Nelson Rockefeller, Reagan, Bush Sr., Clinton, and Bush Jr. She is also a targeted, law-abiding citizen. Please share on social media.
Digital meters are easily and remotely hacked by the government criminals. Yet many TIs continue to use them, as though the readings were accurate, not always true. Targeted Justice recommends analog meters, if they are available. If you insist on using a digital meter, then find a method to calibrate it, right before and after taking a reading. Those are your options. Otherwise, you might continue to blame your refrigerator for microwave attacks. Are the government criminals planning an extended power outage and/or internet outage? Here's some of the things you can do to prepare. Have a backup plan. How will you communicate with friends and family? We recommend walkie-talkies such as Baofeng BFF8 or F8HP. This is not a substitute for a cell phone. Best range is a few miles in the city, 2 for about $39 online, and can be used in an emergency. Do your own research. Make sure you have these power outage supplies prepared. Make sure you have the following: an emergency radio, fire extinguisher, first aid kit, lighter and matches, manual can opener, home repair items, off-grid, washing machine, activities to pass the time like books and board games, and a bug-out bag that has the essentials where you can just pick up and leave.
Just because you're a targeted law-abiding citizen doesn't mean you have to be a victim. Here are a few tips that will allow you to fight back. Print out informative and impactful flyers from targetedjustice.com for free and pass them out to your local medical facilities and post them near police stations. Write a letter to your local congressmen and state legislators. Protest at fusion centers and Space Force buildings. Become a digital warrior.
From Eagle Ed Martin at the DOJ. The Garland memo targeting school board parents was government weaponized against we the people. If you got hurt, let us know. We're digging and listening. The investigation of this memo and its criminality could bust the TSDB wide open. Write to your congressmen and senators.
You might be locked out of your X/Twitter account. Here are some of the tricks the government criminals, likely the NSA, are using. They accuse you of being a robot. The test or challenge they send you is impossible to solve because it is literally off the screen. You cannot check the box. They send a challenge test with gibberish words and tell you to solve it. These tests are further evidence that the government criminals have created a clone of the X website using a supercomputer and are rerouting traffic to block and shadow ban certain users. Both the CIA and NSA are among the few organizations in the world that have supercomputers capable of doing this. If this has happened to you, please let us know.
Calling all digital warriors. Please like, share, and repost this video on all social media. We're still looking for volunteers. What's your skill set? Let us know how you can help by emailing us at tjustice2@proton.me and put volunteer in the subject line. Are you looking for more targeted justice content? Go to Rumble, and that is where our channel is located. We have t-shirts, cups, merchandise, and more at our online store by following these links. You can either buy a gift or get something for yourself. We are a non-profit organization. Please consider donating online or sending us a check. All donations are tax deductible. Thank you again for watching this video. God bless. God bless.
Awesome. Sean does such a wonderful job on the video for the Targeted Justice News. And he also does the videos for Chosen Heroes. So shout out to Sean. Really have enjoyed working with him on these projects. Let's just lead in with some prayer. Father God, I thank you for all that are in attendance today and those who may tune in a little bit later. And I thank you for the opportunity to have Dr. K as a guest today. And I ask that you continue to speak to us and guide us our next steps and actions and lead us down the path to enrich our lives, even though we are in unsurmountable circumstances up against these targeting programs. We ask that you guide us, give us the eyes to seek and ears to hear clearly your message, and not the messages that are portrayed either through subliminal messaging and the frequencies and the targeting program and technology that is used against us and our bodies. God, I ask that you come into our biofields and that you shield us with the light of the heavens, and that you protect us and give us the keys to the wisdom that we need and to seek our own inner healing in our journey, that we become prosperous even though we are under attack, and that we see the tunnel, the light at the end of the tunnel that leads to our own liberation, freedom from oppression and the chains that these programs try to shackle us with. In your name we pray, amen. I want to just give a few announcements. Shout out, as always, to Target Source LLC. Armando has the Silent Night and other devices that can help some within the community. I ask that if you have any questions, just reach out to him at silentnight with a K at .source@gmail.com. And I want to give a shout out to Tranquility. She does a amazing job of doing the tievents.org website, everything that you need, in support and information. And there's just a plethora of opportunities, whether it be calls, podcasts, just plug in. Nothing is more comforting than knowing that you are heard and you are seen, and this community understands what you're going through, whereas your family and friends may not be up to speed on that, or they may be closed at the moment to understand it, but this community understands. I'm still working through some scheduling for July. So next Sunday is to be determined. I don't want to put up anything until I have absolute certainty. You may just have me with a message. So on July 13th, Chris Matlin will be joining us. And the 20th is also in the works. I don't want to announce anything yet. And at the end of the month, permitting the release of his new book, Jason Lee, also known to many as Galactic Monk, will be rounding out the end of the month. Other events on July 5th, I co-host with Jamie Rice the Targeted Survivor Counterintelligence Training bi-weekly conference. And if you can join in, if you're interested, just send me an email and I'll add you to the mailing list at chosen_heroes@proton.me. The link for the conference call, it's hosted by Free Conference Call, is up on the screen as well. There's many channels for the Chosen Heroes. I don't get to update them all as I would like to due to time constraints, but there they all are. And so before I bring up Dr. K, I'm going to first go into a message. Richard Lighthouse had made a post on X yesterday about the frequencies that are being projected at us that could trigger anxiety and trigger anger. So when these episodes come up, for me, I sat with anger for quite a few years, and that kept me stuck. But it doesn't help that we have technology that is, assisting with this type of triggering in us as well. So if you look at anger can be a teacher. Okay. When these frequencies are used against our biofield, what they're doing is they're triggering our central nervous system. So that might be something that is dormant or laying, within our subconscious, and they are triggering with the frequencies something to kind of bubble up and erupt, because you have to know that one of the tactics that is used is to make us seem, unstable, violent, act out, do something that will discredit us, character assassination, all of that we're playing with, right? With these programs. That's their goal. They want to silence us. So it's very important that you stay in the moment and in tune with how you are reacting. Now, sometimes the anger and the anxiety can, have a precursor of having, maybe some pressure, sensation in your head, or your neck or your throat or your abdomen. You just start to pay attention to when you go from one moment of, being okay emotionally or somewhat, stable, into a trigger moment, because that is like a central nervous system override. And what is important to do when you feel these sensations come on, you've got to develop your own countermeasures for these type of things. If it's the external frequencies that are coming against you, the best thing you can do is have your own body and yourself, your higher self, tell you what's going on, to just silence yourself, sit down, become quiet, and just start asking yourself questions. Where is this anger coming from? Is this something external? Is this internal? What does this connect to? Ask yourself, either silently or loud, where is this anger coming from? You may get a one word, back internally. You're answering yourself, right? You may feel a sensation in your body, or you might have a picture flash or a memory come to your mind. This is your body is trying to tell you where it's coming from. It's very important during these times that you just take a moment. You don't want to escalate. You need to go into your countermeasures. Take the time, ask the questions to yourself, go outside, ground in and see nature, ground your feet. You've got to break it up. You've got to be very self-aware when these moments come up as a trigger. Prayer is a powerful way to cut through this too. No weapon formed against me shall prosper. Go into your prayer in that moment. If it's all of a sudden coming up, bubbling up from everywhere, you've got to find your countermeasures when it comes to anger. Music, something that is, of light, uplifting, you've got to, another countermeasure. But again, don't discredit or discount yourself for having the answers, because obviously when these frequencies come against us, they're trying to trigger something. And that trigger of our central nervous system is coming from the first line of defense is going to be your subconscious, where something is buried that they can trigger this anger. I had something happen yesterday where I was calling in. I had a charge on a credit card, and this was not something that was supposed to auto renew, and it did. And I had paid that card off, and then come to find out 2 months later, I have a delinquency, and it shouldn't happen. So I'm trying to get this resolved over the phone. And the person that was on the other end of the line was overspeaking me, cutting me off, misinterpreting what I was saying. So then I became very direct in that moment in challenging the customer service that, she needed to listen. She's not listening. She's not allowing me to finish. And in a very direct way. So I immediately was catching myself, because I think that is a shadow aspect of myself, of being that direct and curt. When I was in my 20s, I forced to be reckoned with. I was very, very, very direct. But this on the other end of the phone, she became so irate at me that she started banging her phone on the desk very hard in my ear, right? So this was my opportunity to, one, engage or disengage from this behavior. So when she finished, I was like, are you done with your phone tantrum, so that we can move on and get this resolved? And instead of escalating it and yelling and doing something better, I caught it in the moment, because I could easily have gone there, right? And then carried on and got things resolved. So again, be cognizant that if you're in one mood and then all of a sudden you're feeling overwhelmed, just sit and be with yourself, meditate, pray, ask yourself the questions: where is this coming from? Is this external or internal? And see what you get from asking yourself these questions. So without further ado, let's bring up our special guest. I'm going to read her bio before I bring her up to the stage. So from a very young age, Dr. K was immersed in her grandmother's stories about Atlantis and the life and messages of Jesus. And her grandmother's teachings about herbal wisdom and holistic practices for body, mind, and spirit, all while honing her innate intuitive abilities. These teachings stuck, and as an adult, by day, she navigated a traditional career, including 4 college degrees and leadership roles in both the private and public sectors, while by night she was busy exploring spiritual pursuits, energy healing modalities like Reiki, EFT tapping, shamanic journeying, and Sanskrit mantra, until COVID hit and she realized that she couldn't continue living the inauthentic life that she had convinced herself she needed. A profound dark night of the soul led her to walk away from her career and follow a new path of deep healing and spiritual growth. Through this process and in the course of mastering multiple disciplinary quantum energy healing techniques as a practitioner, she healed herself of significant trauma using QHHT and classical hypnosis, emotion code, body code, and Lightfield, while also grid working to heal the earth. In early 2024, Dr. K and her business partner colleague created Path of the Masters, a modern-day mystery school. And since they opened their doors, they have been dedicated to helping the next generation of intuitive healers to discover, develop, and hone their unique gifts and uncover the spiritual wisdom of the ancients. Hello, Dr. K. Thank you so much for joining us here today. It's so good to have you as a guest.
Thank you for having me.
So I know that you and I have talked. Can you tell us kind of where all this began? I know a lot of it, you had been doing the spiritual quest before what led up to, COVID. And then afterwards, while all of this is going on, then you became aware that you may have been targeted and experienced directed energy weapons. So can you explain to us how all of this, unraveled and what led up to these directed energy attacks?
Sure. So when COVID began to unroll, I was working for the state. I was a regional manager of administration and finance for Child Protective Services. And up to that point, I thought we were doing good work. I was content with my life. I was content with doing what we were doing and being, living a double life, essentially, doing my spiritual work, because that always was a very important part of my life, but never really talking about it. One thing I will say, and I explained this to you, was prior to COVID, up to that point, I really didn't feel, I was very new agey. And by that, I mean that everything was the universe. I didn't really feel that inner connection to source, although I knew that something existed, obviously, but I just called it the universe, preferring not to need to create a deity in order to identify with it. That's what I told myself.
Mm-hmm.
When COVID began, it was like a switch got flipped, because I knew intuitively, this is big, this is being manufactured, there is something very dark that is underneath this, and it's absolutely spiritually connected. And as the months rolled out, I suddenly realized, yes, divine is real. And it was a moment where all of a sudden I remember just realizing, oh, you are real. And then the next thought was, I'm so sorry that I doubted. And so that was really powerful. But that began to, oddly enough, I think that triggered a speeding up of things that happened. So now we're in the middle of 2020, in the summer. I had given my little house that I had owned for 27 years to my niece, because she was just starting out. She was having a baby. You got to help the kids. And I moved into a little trailer that I bought off of Craigslist, and I plopped it next to my mom's house. And I basically came back home. Now, my family owns 80 acres of land collectively, and I have 30 acres of my own that I've been just paying real estate taxes on perpetually. And I decided during the beginning of COVID that this would be a good time for me to build my dream house. So I was going to be temporarily in this trailer. Didn't happen that way. Of course, COVID continued to get worse and worse. You could see the controls that were being implemented. I became very aware of just all of the dirty dealings that the state was operating when the shots became available. And that was in early 2021. And during that time, this was right around April, I received an email that had been originated by the chief counsel of the agency, where he stated in writing that as far as the agency is concerned, COVID shots are considered routine medical. Therefore, every child that was within, under the purview of DCF was expected to get them. That was it for me. That was the last straw. I had been seeing more and more things. I didn't appreciate how social workers supposedly loved children, but they were denying children access to their parents for the once a month visit because their parents wouldn't put a face muzzle on. Shoving those awful things up the kids' noses. It was so ridiculous, and it was so over the top cruelty that totally made me realize there's something very wrong here. And then the memo, and I realized, okay, I can't sit with this. Mm-hmm. So I immediately reached out to, I think it was Children's Health Defense. I'm not really sure. There were different agencies that were involved with trying to gather information to try to put a stop to the rollout of the vaccines. I say that with tongue in cheek, that term, but I needed to do something. And I did find a group that was creating, they were in the process of forming a lawsuit to try to stop it. So I went on record as a whistleblower. I gave them my evidence. I said, this is proof that the state is, engaging in child experimentation, medical experimentation. Mm-hmm. And it also turned out around that time, the few people that were like-minded that I had discovered in my agency, and there weren't a lot, but there were a few, revealed to me that this was the norm. And when AIDS was rampant back 20 something years ago, and AZT, that awful, horrendous experimental drug, appeared on the scene, that the agency also decided that that was going to be by policy routine medical. Thank God so few children, at least in this state, had that situation where it potentially, because, we all know how AZT turned out and what a tremendously harmful experiment that really was. But this is common practice for this agency. And I had not realized that. And I knew the minute I hit send, I knew my days are numbered with this agency. And so I just resolved that I was going to sit back and wait and see if there was any more evidence that would cross my desk. This was before they put out the mandates from the governor that every state employee had to take the poison. But either way, I knew that I expected that was going to come. And sure enough, it did. I didn't actually receive any more information, unfortunately. I think that they began to wise up somehow. It felt like I was kind of out of the loop after that. So I'm sure that I received some attention for that, and I fully expected it. But at that point, it didn't matter, because what we were doing was just so horrendous, and there was no way that I was going to participate in it. And just like I didn't participate with any of the requests to set up, in the rental. So we had a leased building, and I, of course, had to manage the lease. And so when the EHHS, which is the parent HR for the state and all the state employees in that particular branch, were sending out requests to the administrative managers all across the state to speak with the landlords to see if our parking lots could be used for the traveling vaccine buses. And I absolutely refused to participate in that. I wasn't going to even pretend that I was on board with any of that. And so I think that they kind of knew just from my behavior that this one's not buying. I'm not drinking the Kool-Aid. And I also began to see there was a huge ramp up of these continuing ed courses that they just kept shoving out and telling all the employees, well, this is a mandatory, you have to do this. And a lot of people, we all noticed that there were so many of them, and maybe they were redundant, but they had different appearances. And so people were talking, saying, well, maybe the state is looking for different contractors of this material. And I wasn't so sure, because the repetitiveness I was already picking up on. There's something more than just, superficial education here. I wasn't too tuned into the fundamentals of hypnosis at that point, but I could see that there was a lot of mind control that was going on. I was recognizing the effects of it. It wasn't affecting me, because and I don't know why, other than I think that it was my newfound recognition of the connection to divine that was keeping me, above all that, so that I could see it. And the other thing too is I've never had a television. I've never, I don't watch TV or movies or get involved with any of that stuff. So I wasn't being bombarded with the mind washing that's within all of that stuff. But I noticed that, and I started to research, and it was one company, and the company had it was the CEO of the company at that time had roots in Tavistock. So that was when I had read all about, Tavistock years ago, because I've always been interested in these, all of the nefarious things that potentially go on. I wouldn't have called myself a full-blown conspiracy theorist at that point, but I knew that what was, that the stories being told to people are not necessarily accurate. So I could see that there was programming that was happening. And then in September of that year, the governor issued the mandates. All state employees had to agree to take poison shots. I was not going to do it, so I knew that I was going to lose my job, and that was fine. Really not fine, but fine. It wasn't even a choice. And up to that point, I had worked really hard. This was my career. I I was making almost six figures, not quite, but this was more money than I'd ever made in my life. I needed to build a house. So I did have goals, but it didn't matter because there was no way on earth that I was going to do that. No way. So the drop dead date was the middle of October. And at the beginning of September, I learned about the fraud and the identity theft with the U.S. citizen racket, with the birth certificate and all of that. I realized that U.S. citizen is actually a corporate entity and that everyone's identities pretty much have been hacked unless you take back your birthright political status, which is not that jurisdiction. And so I became a state national. And that was at the beginning of September. And that was a really powerful moment for me because I felt like I had asserted my sovereignty. I had declared that this is my, my stick in the sand, and I'm not going over it. And just from that point on, it more than anything, it didn't really have too many effects on the outside world, but it definitely made me feel like I've taken a stand. That's what this is worth to me. And it was very empowering. And an interesting thing, as I was driving home after having done all the paperwork and recorded, this was September 5th of 2021. I was driving through a neighborhood, normal, reasonably calm, quiet neighborhood, back roads. And all of a sudden, as I'm thinking, today is my Independence Day. Today is September 5th. This is my personal Independence Day. And as I had that thought, fireworks lit up the sky above, and I was driving suddenly right through a neighborhood party, leftover from the 4th of July, apparently in September. And I was like, wow, thank you, divine. That was confirmation. So it was really good. But anyway, a few weeks later, I got suspended along with a bunch of others who had taken a stand that they were not going to be doing this. And then I lost my job. Most of the other people, unfortunately, went back. But I was one of a handful that said, no, absolutely not. And so I was left at the end of 2021, living in a trailer outside my mom's property, having to collect early retirement, which was, I had only been with the state for 14 years and I had just vested. I had literally passed my age 55, which is what you need, a few months prior when I had my birthday. So I was positioned where at least I was covered. Divine had me covered. So I could live while I was figuring out what do I do with my life? I'm too young to retire. And so I wallowed for a few months in like, oh my gosh, what do I do? I couldn't even tell my mother because it was just, I don't know, it was weird. It was a very unsettling time. But then I began focusing on my own healing because I realized, you know what? I have horrendous PTSD. There's so much trauma here, and I'm hyper vigilant about everything. I no longer trust any of the systems that I grew up thinking, had us all covered. That was my real wake up call. And so I just knew I had to throw myself into clearing all of these blockages. And so I spent pretty much the first half of 2022 focusing on my own healing. So I focused on, I discovered Lightfield. Lightfield is a beautiful technology that was created by a man who lived in Chester. He's since passed, but he was absolutely a genius, and his son has taken over his work as well now that he's passed. But it's called conscious technology, and it really uses crystals and sacred geometry and sound frequencies to put your body in a state of 0 point so that you are not stressed at all. Because that's what our bodies were designed to do, was to heal ourselves. But it's really hard to do that when you're under stress. And so any sort of what's going on out there needs to really get turned off to allow your body the ability to regenerate and to, restore. And so it was that sort of thing that I was doing. I was exploring different techniques, learning them, and also learning, to practice. And so I began.
Can you go in a little bit more about, you said this was Lightfield, you said?
Right. Lightfield Foundation. So Lightfield Foundation, it's right now it's in the process. It was in Chester, Mass. for many years it operated, and when the inventor Mark Newkirk first created it, he wanted to provide it to people so that they could have healing access without charging them any money, because he was
Mhm.
very much focused on bringing healing to the world, to everyone, and giving people access. And he didn't feel that financial ability should get in the way of letting people have that. You know what I mean? He was very much service to others. But year after year, unfortunately, too many people took advantage of it and didn't feed that, because certainly they took donations, but many people would just go, people that could actually afford it. And basically it got to a point over the years when it was no longer sustainable. And so they had to shut down that location. But meanwhile, after Mark passed, his son and his son's family carried on the work, and they had moved to Rhode Island. So they have created a wonderful healing center down there. It's called Awaken, and that's in Wakefield, Rhode Island. And they're in the process of actually creating a brand new facility, much larger than before, but they took the Lightfield technologies down there, and there's lots of different amazing things that they have, and they have some really powerful energy healers down there as well. So that's
So
a reason.
what does the Lightfield technology and getting to the 0 point? I know you said crystals and sacred geometry. Can you give us an example of what that is?
Well, I'm not really sure how it's built, but I can describe it. It looks like a large, almost like a blimp, the rounded, pointy edge shape, but it's just a frame. It's a frame, and there's a mattress in there right in the middle. And so you go into the Lightfield, you lay down, and they turn on the device, and you can hear it fire up, and you can hear the sound frequencies, beautiful music, solfeggio frequencies, and you can feel the lights that are coming down on you, and you just pretty much instantly relax, and you drift off. You turn your intention towards whatever healing you really want to manifest, whether it's body, mind, or spirit, and it really does put you in that state. It's a very, very cool. I had never heard of such a thing before this time. I didn't know it was there all those years. I discovered it kind of at the end of its tenure up in my neck of the woods before it moved to Rhode Island. But people can take a look. If you call up lightfieldfoundation.org, you will find information about it, and it's quite remarkable. But it will be available as soon as the new Awaken Center in Rhode Island comes online, as well as other technologies that Mark's son Ross has created. And Mark also created there's his very first device was called Flow, and he began that with several other people, scientists, and they were developing it, but they had a falling out because the other scientists wanted to charge the public when it was ready lots of money, and Mark didn't want to do that. He said everyone should be able to have access to healing technology for free. Yes. And so he said, I'm going to walk away. So he left. Shortly after, he received, and I'm pretty sure that it came to him in a dream, but all of the dimensions and the blueprint for Lightfield, which he then proceeded to build shortly after. So he was rewarded by divine, essentially, for being so service to others.
That's excellent. Well, we have looking at the chat.
So anyway,
they're wondering how you became a target. and what
right, I know. I got to keep going. I got to keep going with my story. Sorry. So anyway, throughout all the healing, and also I turned my attention to this is what I need to do, is I need to help other people. So what is my specialty? Well, I decided I felt like hypnosis is what I really needed to learn, because I could see how much hypnosis was going on, and I wanted to help people to get out of that. So I began focusing on that. So I finished my Doctor of Divinity degree, and I published several books. And then meanwhile, I decided I was going to why, I don't know. I was going to start dating. So I signed up for eHarmony. And very shortly after, this was in April of 2023, I met somebody on eHarmony who was a local guy, seemed very spiritual, um, you know, just had all the right things. And he was currently recovering from shoulder surgery. He worked for the post office, and we began to hang out together. And so I would go over at his house. He lives within a half an hour of me, so very conveniently close. And he had a beautiful garden out back, lots of fruit, bushes, wild raspberry and blackberry bushes, and it just all the same things that I really appreciate and get into. He would talk about organic gardening, and he had a lovely dog and cat, and he just seemed really wonderful. And he was a former military person. So, he would tell me the stories about, and more as our relationship began to advance with time. So I learned that he had been overseas, and he actually he was the driver for General Colin Powell. They were stationed over in, I believe it was Germany together. So we're going back quite far. And he handled intelligence. And he also was responsible for whenever there were signals that were intercepted, signals in like different codes. I don't want to say Morse code, but that's the only thing that comes to mind because I don't really know what the other codes are. But apparently, every government has their own type of code. And so he was responsible to collect that. And a couple of times he collected some code. It was coming in and it was not recognizable in any of the enormous books that he had, which identified these. And so he had to turn those over and fly them to Washington where they disappeared. So he told me that he knew that those were galactic alien signals. And so during that time when he was in the military, he became kind of obsessed with the whole idea of aliens. And that was a theme that continued throughout our 4-month relationship. So he began to get more and more controlling as time passed, and more domineering. And what initially was, oh, you're just so wonderful. All of that love bombing began to turn into criticism. Initially he loved that I was a country girl. He liked my pigs. He wanted to make friends with them. He would come over and bring them treats to try to make friends. And, oh, what a cute little quaint trailer you have here. And, this is good. And he seemed to respect that I had let my job fire me. I took a stand for what I believed in. He seemed to respect that. And he's telling me more and more about his history. And it turned out that when he had left the service right around the time of Hurricane Sandy, because he suffered a career-ending injury, stuffing. He had been called down to stuff the sandbags to prevent, I guess, the water from coming in, and really fast. He ended up ripping his shoulder, and they just kicked him out to pasture. And I found it very weird that he just continued to talk about the military like they were the best thing that ever happened to me. And it was such a wonderful time. And, I just loved it so much. And there was no bitterness or anger or anything about the fact that they had essentially pulled him off of his regular job and made him go and do something like that. Let him get hurt to that degree, and then just say, "Oh, okay, well, now you're hurt. We don't need you anymore." And so that was, I thought that was strange. I didn't really like, and this was the thing, like I just kind of let him talk, and he liked to talk about a lot of things, and I didn't really say, well, I think I would be really upset. I don't think I would be so loyal, if that had happened to me. I just kept it to myself. And I think that was probably wise of me based on what ended up happening. So anyway, that was revealed. When we were first talking, getting to know each other, and he was telling me about, oh yeah, years ago I was in the service and I retired from there. And yeah, I think that I had a girlfriend that I met overseas, and we were engaged. And then I ended up, she didn't want me to take a high level job because it was going to be too dangerous. So I ended up retiring out, taking not, I guess, I'm not really sure the terminology, but when your term is up, you can sign up again for another so many years. And so
Right.
that was the thing. And he was going to either, he was offered some kind of a commission to do a dangerous job. I'm going to say it probably was something similar to like Navy SEALs. It probably wasn't that exactly, but it was something like that, which was going to be dangerous. And so his girlfriend at the time didn't want him to do that. So he said, fine. And so he didn't sign up again. So he ended up coming back to the States and trying to find a job. And he couldn't find a job, and it was very difficult. Meanwhile, she's overseas and things are not going well between them. She was supposed to eventually join him, but she never ended up doing that. And then all of a sudden he finds out that she's pregnant and she allegedly has the baby, and then the baby dies. And so he was kind of like, I think that I have, I don't know, either I lost a child or I have, or she lied and I have a grown son somewhere in Europe that I don't know. And so that was kind of like, oh, that's a sad story to
Right.
tell somebody.
Hmm.
And, I mean, I was just, I was sympathetic, of course, because that must be awful, but that's trauma to be carrying for all those years. So little things like that would come out. One day he showed me a cachet that he had uncovered when he was over in Germany from a warehouse. And it was a bunch of actual Nazi papers. And he was all secretive, showing me this is a treasure. And we're looking through it, and I'm seeing it was things like inventory lists of boots and socks and just things. And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, I mean, it is cool, but there's nothing incriminating or dangerous or anything. But he was so secretive about it. He was like,
Right.
if people knew that I had this, I might disappear. And I was just like, oh, you poor thing, that you're that paranoid to think that something like this. I mean, I'm sure lots of people have memorabilia like that. I didn't think anything of it, but
Right.
it was part of the way that he was trying to, I think, make me come around to his way of thinking that, oh, this is a dangerous situation that we're in. And, I got out and eyes
Yeah.
might be on me. It was kind of like, make me look around. Well, is somebody watching us? Because I didn't really know too much about targeted individuals. I didn't know too much about any of that. And
Yes.
I didn't really have the distrust of the military the way that I do today
Yes.
back then.
And a lot
And
of the
so-
things that he revealed
And so he
to
just,
you, yes, was about his time with the military and the intelligence, the signal intelligence, right, for the coding. So he was like
Yeah.
deciphering code, and
mhm.
I think you had, and you may be leading up to it, is he even at one time mentioned something to you about the MK Ultra. What's it?
Yeah. So right when we were first together, we were kind of talking about, because he didn't, he told me right out the gate, he didn't really trust government, yet he had taken the COVID shots. And so that was a weird contradiction there, but I didn't really say much. I just took them. But anyway, I was asking him, I said, I've recently learned a little bit about MK Ultra, and, do you know anything about that? He scoffed. Oh, no, that's nothing. You don't worry about. That's all, that's fabricated. However, towards the end of our relationship, and he liked his cannabis. I will tell you that was something that he did not use alcohol, but he definitely used cannabis. And during one time when he had smoked, he just started going on and on talking about, again, his glory days in the military. And then he started describing the different levels of security clearance that he was responsible to grant, to oversee. And I don't even remember the detail as he's going on rambling about, well, this level you have to, you have to be at least an officer, and then this level the generals only, it's only the generals and the top brass and the people in the government that have access to that, and then the highest level, that's MK Ultra, but we can't talk about that. I didn't, when he said that, inside of me I was like, whoa, okay, well, I'm not going there. I didn't want to acknowledge it, so I just kind of kept talking about something else, let it go over my head, because at that point he had been escalating into these really weird behaviors of being obsessed with collecting what he thought were alien artifacts. How he couldn't wait to show me the latest thing that he bought. And just to kind of describe the increasing level of off balance that he was getting, when we first met, he made it a point to tell me that he was very financially responsible, that he had no bills other than the regular, the electric and the phone, whatever, had nothing like that. And he only had a few $1,000s left for his mortgage. And then his house was his. And he was so proud of that. In the 4 months that we were together, he went from that to owing over $60,000 in home equity credit because he had discovered this so-called dig down in Abuelos de Jalisco, which is a South American, where they were allegedly uncovering all of these artifacts, which he was convinced were from proof that aliens, the gray aliens were, had part in, they're the ones that created man. So he was just buying all these things for thousands of dollars, and his bills were going up and up. And during that, very disturbing. And I had said to him, I'm a little bit, don't you feel that, maybe you're going really fast to spend all this money on this stuff? He got absolutely infuriated with me. How dare I question his money? And it was really blown out of proportion that he would be so like a snake striking. And I was just like, whoa, okay. That was about 2.5 months into our relationship. And maybe it was a little further, but from that point on, I just realized I have to be very careful because there's a lot more going on with him mentally than
becoming unstable. Do you
Yes.
think that he could have been under the influence of being targeted himself? Maybe, talking too much about, or sharing too much about his experience with the military and him deciphering the intelligence coding and such. It just seems like he just continued to unravel. But, sometimes a narcissist lure is they seem like they're Prince Charming in the beginning, and then they slowly reveal themselves, and the abusiveness starts to reveal itself too.
Yeah, I honestly, I don't know, but it was so different. And it happened slowly, gradually, just getting worse and worse and more extreme. And he just really went, like, the whole talk about aliens. Initially, we could talk about things, about spiritual things, about, just normal life. And it got to a point where all he wanted to do was talk about aliens. And he liked to do treasure hunting. He had been doing that his whole life. He had, metal detectors. He had collected jars worth of things that he had unearthed in his travels over the years. And his goal was to go out and travel around and look for proof of alien, I guess, all across America. And that was where he was going. And, he wanted me to do that with him. He wanted a companion that was going to take part in this because he felt that we were going to save the world and the human race by somehow knowing that gray aliens created mankind. I'm not really sure, but it was so weird. And meanwhile, he just got angry at all kinds of, I don't even know. He became, I felt like I was walking on eggshells toward the end. And where I had originally been very calm and I was, things were really nice initially, but they just got worse and worse. And then I got to the point where I'm walking on eggshells. He exploded at something. I probably exploded too, because at that point I was so stressed out just being around him. And
Yeah.
I just burst into tears and I said, I can't do this anymore. And I
Right.
came home. That was on it was on a Sunday. And
Mhm.
so that night, nothing. The next day, nothing. Oh, there's my hummingbird. I have a hummingbird. He likes to book. And but the following night, I fell asleep in my trailer like I always do. My pigs are right out behind it. And I woke up in the morning and I had 2 blistering burns on my stomach. And I sent you a
I'll
picture
show a
of that
picture. Yes,
because
I'm
I
going to show
took
it.
the picture. Yeah. Yep. That appeared overnight. And I noticed, and I don't know if I noticed it that exact day, but I did notice it within a couple of days that I also had what looked like fingerprint pads on both arms here.
Like someone grabbed
There were
you.
4 rounded, like someone grabbed me on both of my upper arms and squeezed really hard from behind. And what ended up happening over the course of the next few weeks, my teeth started to chip and I ended up with a cavity quickly, like very, very quickly. So I knew with the burns when I realized something happened, something hit me, and I suspected that it was some sort of a targeted energy weapon. I immediately I said there's no such thing as coincidences, and so I'm sure that it had something to do with him. Okay, whatever, I didn't say anything. I didn't reach out to him. And oddly enough, divine always answers me. I needed something to focus on. All of a sudden I got notice that there was a class that was upcoming, and the class was about seal and implant removal and clearing. And so, this ties into earth energy and ley lines and also frequency fences. It's a whole entire discipline that's related to grid working, basically. It's the recognition that Earth's biofield and the human biofield are actually very similar. We share the same structure because Earth is our mother. We rely on her. She nourishes us just like the sun gives us life and divine animates us. So that was very appealing to me, and I just knew I had to take that class, and it was to learn how to do Jehovian seal clearings and Aryan occult Draco seal clearings, and also to really learn about people to do this sort of energy clearing, because it all comes down to ways that our human spirit on the multi levels of our biofield are always being hijacked. And so I really wanted to learn that. I became very, very focused. And so at the end of the week, I got an email from my then ex, and it just said,
So did you, with the work that you did, do you think that he felt that energetically, that like, oh, something's going on, and reached out to you? What type of, so what does the removal of the seal and the implant energetic, can you tell the audience what that means?
Well, there's a lot to it, but kind of in a nutshell, a lot of people have heard about Jehovian seals. This actually is symbolized by the Armageddon timeline that the Bible references. The Jehovian seals are the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, are actually tied to the Jehovian seals. And what they are energetic blockages that have been implanted in Earth's grid on the 7th exotonal line, which runs through Cape Cod, in my neck of the woods. And what it does is it hijacks the human energy field along the left side, which is the feminine side. The left side of the body is the feminine receiving magnetic side. The right side is the masculine electric action. And so the Jehovian seals target that. They're also called artificial death seals. And so this really it's like an energetic sort of surgery to remove them. Now, there are seals that impact our physical physical body, and there are also universal seals that affect the collective, such as there is a universal seal called the crown of thorns, which keeps humanity stuck in the story of the betrayal and the trauma and the pain and the suffering of Jesus on the cross, and not able to get out of the story in order to recognize the lesson that Jesus came here to teach us all. And so it creates a blockage in consciousness. And there are many different seals that impact different people in different ways. And the seal removal process is the recognition of these energetic implants and the removal and the command that they be gone. It's basically, it's taking back your power and being sovereign and breaking, any implied contract to have them there in the first place. And that's the left side. The right side targets the masculine action principle. And these seals are more concentrated towards the center of they come up through to the South Pole and up through Africa and Europe, in that area. And in the body, they target the action principle, which is the divine masculine, and some of the universal seals that are, included within this set are the seals which keep people stuck in the militaristic mindset. Everything about the Nazi regime is really represented by the energy of the Aryan occult Draco seals. It's the master race programming. It's the hierarchical, militaristic domination. And I mean, you can see how that's corrupted and created the toxic masculine archetype. The divine masculine is the light of that archetype, and the shadow of it is the toxic masculine. Just like the divine feminine is the light of the archetype, the beautiful archetype, over here, and the shadow is the toxic feminine. And so it's really keeping humanity, our consciousness, suppressed and not able to break out of these blocks, basically. And so that's what this class was about. Now, I didn't have the class yet, but I signed up for it. And so my intention was out there. And yes, I think it is. Again, I don't think anything's coincidence. He reached out to me pretty much immediately after with an email. I missed you. Can I talk to you? I may have made a mistake, and blah, blah, blah. I didn't respond. And then a few hours later, he called me. I didn't answer. And he left me a voicemail that said, I'm coming over. And so I was like, well, I'm not going to be here. So I just left because I didn't want to see him. And I know he came and he left. I stayed away. I came back and I sat down and I thought, when I sat down, I composed an email and I just said, I appreciate that. I appreciate, thanks for the apology. That makes me feel, I feel good that you recognize. However, we can talk, but things would have to change. And meanwhile, I have signed up and committed myself to a very intensive class that's going to be upcoming. And I am going to, just so you know, that is my focus now. I need to work on me. I need to get back on my path. Because I was realizing at that point that 4-month period, he had been pulling more and more of my attention. And I had just finished my doctorate. I had just finished learning classical hypnosis with an international trainer, Paul McKenna, who's world renowned. So I had, I had started Emotion Code a few years prior. I was getting ready to go back to finish that as well. So I had really been focused on, okay, I'm getting ready to step into my new role to help people, And then he and I met and I get derailed. And then I got sucked more and more and more into these stories. And he wanted me to do his thing. And I mean, one time he even called me poverty girl. So that whole thing about your cute trailer and I like your pigs was like, that's not acceptable. And, you never should have, you should have just gone along with the mandates, because you wouldn't be in the financial situation that you're in now, having to totally reinvent yourself. If you should have just gone along with it. And I was like, wait a minute. No, I shouldn't have.
Like a 180.
What happened to the, your strong, and I Exactly, exactly. But that was just one, just part of the transformation that happened pretty quickly. But I realized, in this process, in the week after, that, okay, first of all, whether he knows it or not, he was responsible for me being attacked like that. I don't want any part of that. And secondly, I let my attention get pulled off my path. I need to get back on it. And so I really took a stand, I think, energetically, and I recommitting to this. And my teeth continued to have effects, but I don't believe that I have had any additional targeting situations. I'm not aware of it. It did make me realize I need to learn everything that I can about this. And so
Right.
that put me on a fast track to dive into MK Ultra, dive into, the military involvement, and learn everything I could about the targeted population. I discovered Laura Worley and her work to help people remove the programming. And I just, that just validated, I'm so glad that I learned hypnosis. I need to do this work. And so that's kind of where I've been going ever since, and adding more and more pieces of tools to my toolbox. And then
Yes.
not long after that, I finished the program. So I went to the class. It was amazing. And I recognized how powerful it was. And I committed myself to, I'm going to get 100 volunteers, and I'm going to practice seal clearing for all of those people. And I'm going to achieve the 100th monkey effect, because a lot of people know about Jehovah's seals, but not too many people know about the Aryan occult seals. And so I wanted to do my part to bring it to the public's awareness. And I got 122 volunteers. So I did more than 100, but I spent about 6 weeks filling up my calendar and just going one clearing after another, after another, after another, after another. And it actually brought me to a place of where but when I was done, I feel like I'm a master. And right around that time as well was when quantum healing hypnosis technique, Dolores Cannon's program, that came into my email too. And I was like, oh,
Wow.
I didn't know. I had known about that. I had known about Dolores Cannon for a long time. And I always wanted to experience it, but I never thought that it was within my reach to learn how to become a practitioner. So
Right.
I went and did both level 1 and level 2. And I moved right into working with more volunteers than I needed to master that as well. And so it really did, like, this whole horrendous experience with him really did jumpstart my transformation. And I lost the fear. Even though I was practicing with people, I was really afraid to actually go out and do it. And doing the seal clearing, as I was practicing with all of those people, and I was, for some reason, I was just so driven that I'm going to do this.
Yes.
You don't have to do that. But I just decided I'm going to do the hypnosis that I learned. And so, you know what? I can do this. I can do all of this. And that really allowed me to step into my power. And so that's the story. And I have never had any contact with him ever since. And I haven't recognized any other targeting.
Well, I
That's
mean,
okay.
it seems like when
I'm
you
good.
did get attacked, it was quite a bit of energy that for it to burn you. Then you had fingerprints, like hand fingerprints on both of your arms. That's very scary. And then for it to impact your teeth, which is probably an after effect of such a dose of the directed energy that would cause these big blisters on your stomach to come up. It's fortunate that you have not, but it did put you into your spiritual path, as you stated. Do you, and the work that you're doing too, like you said, that it taught you not to be afraid and fearful, which we know that an anchor of this program is fear and intimidation and manipulation. that oppressive.
Yeah.
And I find it very fascinating about the energetic seals. I have heard about energetic seals and energetic implants, but this was all down my path of exploring energy healing and such too. So for the community, are there some things, some guidance that you can, and tools or techniques, things that they could do today that to kind of help with their day-to-day targeting experience, and to give them a tool, like something, some coping tools?
I'm sorry, you're kind of breaking up a little. But you're asking
Okay.
me if I recommend any particular tools,
Well, if there's
right?
some guidance or tips or
Can you hear me?
techniques. Yes, can you hear me? Yes, you were kind of choppy on my end
Yes.
too. There is a weather
Uh,
event here, so that might have something to do with it. Um,
mhm.
but is there some guidance, some tips, some techniques that the community that you can share with the community that may help them? Those that are under, the constant bombardment of attack and by the energy weapons, and just the voice to skull technology, all of that the targeting program brings. Is there some things that they could try at
Yeah.
home to help them?
Well, I mean, I first of all, I have to say that I feel so much for people that are going through that, and it is really hard to step out when you are in imminent threat, and you're dealing with pain, you're dealing with all of the effects of that. It is really hard, just like it's really hard to meditate when you're stressed. And so you really have to get you have to get to a place internally where you can at least find some measure of peace. So I do recommend going out in nature to start with. Going out grounding, putting your bare feet on the earth, get your hands in the dirt, do gardening, get outside. If you can get into the woods, all the better, because at least you're kind of a little bit removed from some of that, because we know that, these these technologies are hijacking the airwaves around with the Gwen towers, and they're coming through the electrical grid, and they're also coming through the ether, which has been magnetized with heavy metals, being sprayed by the planes. And so that creates a much more powerful carrier. And so that's a lot of the ways that they're getting to us. But there are also spiritual attacks that are going on simultaneously. And so by going out in nature, what I would do and what I have done in the past, whenever I have felt that there was just so much going on, so much bombardment, I would start with a fast. So and I have fasted, the longest I've ever gone was 6 days. But when you fast, and the Bible talks about fasting and how that really does purify your vessel. And so you become much, the wisdom and the connection to source when your vessel is pure. That's, one of the most surefire ways to do that is to fast. So I recommend that people employ that, and they get out in nature first and foremost, because that will help to cut on some of the noise. And so if people can do that, by all means, that's a great way to start. And from that point on, people really need to find a method that works for them. Like you said, it's the patterns of trauma, the triggering. And there are a lot of somatic techniques that people can begin to employ that will help that. Focusing on your breath. Breath work is really powerful. breath really is, that's the animation of divine source that goes into our body, basically. That's what keeps us alive. If you focus on the breath, and you learn, and you can learn different techniques, because it's not just, one or two ways. There are many, many ways. There are people that have actually made entire careers out of teaching others how to do breath work. And the way that you do the breath work will also give your body relief. And not only that, but it brings your attention into the present moment. And when you bring your attention back, that's a step into sovereignty, because you are taking control of your attention and becoming conscious. It's very easy to get stuck when you get stuck in the victim mode, because you're everything's out here, and you're focusing on that because you're in danger. But if you can stop and take the attention back and bring it back into your body and ground yourself there, breath work is really powerful to do that. And especially if you're grounding at the same time. But there are also other techniques that people can do. EFT tapping is another. That's something that really helped me a lot when I was going through issues, not even relating to this, but well before that. And that's just, hitting pressure points on your face and your head and your upper body. And again, you can find information. It's very easy to do. And what that actually does is that stops amygdala hijack right in the moment. And so if you do that intentionally, and you tap through the positions as you are focusing, and initially what it teaches initially is, as you're tapping through the sequence of the movements, you want to really allow yourself to feel what it is you're feeling, and just let it be with it. And that's the process of allowing. And that's also what the body was designed to do, was to feel emotions. And, that kind of goes into a lot of the problems that people have. If you don't process your emotions in the moment, more times than not, they become blocked. And that creates densities within us. And it can be caused by emotions and trauma, lots of things bring that on. But these are actual blockages that happen to the body. And if you don't and tapping while you're focusing is one way, emotion code is another.
Yes, you're cutting out. I think the connection. So I believe what you were saying was, if these feelings lay there and they're causing this blockage, and they're not released, and they're trapped, then that can turn into more physical symptoms, and even turn into disease. So it's very important to not suppress, but find, being able to find a safe space, create a safe space for yourself to process, and to release, and be the observer of that, and to release it.
Yeah. Right. Emotion code is another really good technique that people can learn. And, go to the library and get the book. It's by Brad Nelson. He teaches the entire technique that I went and did the classes for to become certified in. But you can certainly do it by picking up the book. There are many, many ways that people can empower themselves. And in my school, that's the biggest thing, that's what we teach, is we don't want to give people fish. We want to teach them how to fish so that they can go out and help others. And that it's really all about that. But emotion code is a very powerful tool, along with breath work.
I do have that book, and I do recommend it for those that are wanting to embrace the energy healing work. Emotion Code is a book. You can find it on Amazon. You could probably find it used too for just, a fraction of what that cost is. I know that we're on a budget and such, but also I wanted to shout out to the community as well. I believe it was episode 3 of the Chosen Heroes. I did a presentation on emotional freedom technique. That's the EFT tapping that Dr. K was mentioning. I go through the sequencing and give statements as an example so that you can help work yourself through, a moment or where you're feeling, extra, like triggered, anxious, and enraged, just to sit with your body and give it the attention that it needs in order to release and process these emotions. And you can find that on my YouTube channel.
And
I
Laura
believe it's
Worley,
episode 3. Go ahead.
Laura Worley, who I mentioned earlier, who helps survivors deprogram, uses emotion code tapping, EFT tapping, in her process to help people deprogram. So there are many, many ways that you can learn how to use some of these very basic techniques to apply them to different intentions. They're very, very powerful. And that's a huge part of the journey, I think, is to discover things and to apply them, just to try them out and see how that works. She discovered it all on her own just by trying.
Yes, and where your mind goes, your body follows. So if you are overriding and trying to break up that programming that's been done against you and being used against you, it's like a system override. And this is how we counter the targeting. Yeah. They don't want us healed. They don't want us persevering. Yeah. They don't want us ascending and elevating our consciousness. Right.
And,
they want to keep us
that's the thing too. No, they definitely do not. The other thing that I can recommend too is that, and I know this is hard for people, but the more detoxing you can do of your physical body, the better off you're going to be. Because, it's not just emotional blockages, but also the physical densities. Our nervous system, the vagus nerve channel and the endocrine system has been very heavily targeted by the garbage in the foods, by the stuff in the air, by, the fluoride, by pharmaceuticals. All of that is designed to create dysregulation. And so the more detoxing methods you can do to focus on, I feel like I began detoxing really heavily about 10 years ago because I had a horrendous vaccine injury for a job. That's when I woke up to how dangerous vaccines are. And I basically, within 24 hours of getting 5 shots all at once, because I didn't know that within 24 hours, I had promptly lost my short-term memory. And I was having brain fog, and it was awful. It was literally happened overnight. My family, fortunately, helped me with that. And I just began to detox. I used the Gerson protocol, which is all about green coffee enemas and high test juice nutrition. And so that's what I did. And I also got rid of, every chemical that I could possibly have been using in my house, my household items, and changed my diet radically. But that was very, very helpful to eliminate your body, your vessel, the better off you're going to be. And the less impact anything that's from the outside is going to have on you. So that's another thing that I recommend that people explore holistic.
Yes, detoxing is very, very important. We're bombarded, with, energy through directed energy technologies and then of course, everything that's in the air, in the water, in the food, eating a whole food diet. I do clean keto because sugar is an enemy of the body. It really is.
Oh, yeah.
You take sugar and stress, and that there alone, and that's a dangerous combination. We already are under stress. So anything we can do I think that I find things that I make with my hands, either if it's a meal or it's doing something creative. I think sometimes when we're overwhelmed and we're feeling under attack, we kind of withdraw. But when we start to put our mind to focus on creation, whether it is music, art, or just doing some little hobby or finding something in that creative outlet, that's also nurturing your inner child too, and
Yeah.
making sure that you can connect and still play, and nurturing that relationship with yourself. You've got to set aside time for yourself, because this experience can engulf you, and it is just it's like a very negative spin cycle that you're just going around. So you have to find time to disconnect from technology as best as you can, and to create, to still be everything
Mm,
is so easy access and quick in society, whether it be fast food, quick this, you got Amazon that could have it to you today, all of these things are like quick fix. But if we can tap back into our creative side of who we are, and to be able to create something with our own hands, and not have to go to chat GPT, or
yeah.
try to do the math in our head, because it's all about ease of the access these days. Grounding, getting outside, trying different techniques that resonate with you,
Yeah.
to help clear your biofield that is under attack, and nurturing your body with good foods that are going to work for you and not against you too. Avoiding processed foods when you can. I know they're cheaper, and it's purposeful how cheap and easy access they are, because they're filled
Yeah.
with a bunch of chemicals that are what? Neurodisruptive. They are working against
Yep.
your autoimmunity. They are suppressing your hormones and nutrients being absorbed within your body. They're robbing you of all of those things, in addition to a plethora of poisons that are just, keep helping perpetrate the brain fog and the lack of energy, and so that you are kind of entrained and hooked on needing more of it for fast fuel, when it really is working against you.
Yeah.
So can you
So
tell us a
true.
little bit about
Yeah.
what led up to you founded with your business partner the Path of the Masters Mystery School? And when did you open for the school?
Well, I met my business partner through QHHT because as I
Mm-hmm.
was doing the training, I realized I need to go and actually experience it, because I'm a firm believer that it's really hard to apply something that you haven't personally experienced. So I wanted that experience,
Mm-hmm.
and I looked in the QHHT directory and I found someone who was not far from me, and I met her and we instantly realized, wow, we're soul sisters. So
Mm-hmm.
we began doing group past life regressions and, and group meditations, guided visualization journeys for people together. And we just realized, hey, we both have a passion for teaching spiritual development, and we want to do this. And so the school was born. We haven't we actually launched our very first semester, which is a 6-month time frame of classes, in April.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a bunch of students, and we're actually expanding to into additional classes beginning at September and October. And so, we're definitely growing, but we're continuing to do other events to bring community together. We launched what we called the Equinox Expo in March. That was our first really coming out story, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
as it were. We rented a venue, and we got a bunch of providers, energy healers, and creative, intuitive people that make make special crystal energy kits and products and holistic tonics and so on, and also a lineup of professionals, presenters that wanted to teach people. And we just brought everybody together into this big venue, and we had lots of people, and everybody loved it. Everybody left and had nothing but great things to say, and that was kind of our kickoff. And so that's part of what we do as well. It's not just doing classes and teaching, but we also feel like, we have a knack to bring community together, and we want to grow our consciousness community, because a lot of people that are intuitive and that do that sort of work, they're not good at promotion. They're not good at website building. They're not good at any of the technology. And so they can use, kind of like a community coming together consciously. And so that's what we've been working on sort of simultaneously. And, one thing to bring it back, just the talk about energy healing and creative, intuitive people, I feel, and what I've discovered in my journey with a lot of the targeted community, so many of us are tuned in to our gifts. And that's part of the reason why we've been targeted, because we are so powerful. We have that ability, we have that connection that a lot of, just doing their thing, that think all of this either doesn't exist or, wouldn't believe it, has had no experience with it. They're left alone. Why? Because they're not a threat. But we are intuitively connected, and so we are, because we're powerful. And so that's a superpower, just like creativity, that we can lean into.
It's like, we have the light switch on, and we're seeing, and it, picked up on, per se, those that are in slumber and just going with the entrainment and not questioning anything, not seeking out anything other than the daily grind. Sometimes people just get trapped, like you're in that cycle of the hamster wheel, right? You're just going, like you said, you're looking at, feeding into, the buy, and getting into more debt. And like you said, it's just overwhelming. It's this cycle. And you're constantly, wanting more, striving more, got to get this, got to get that. And I just think that this whole experience kind of it really does a reality check on things. It's very frightening. It can be very scary when it first happens, and your whole world implodes, and you realize that all that was fed and served out on a platter of information was misinformation, that the government that is supposed to be protecting you, and the law that is supposed to be protecting you, is not. They're trying to paint a different picture about you. It really is a spiritual battle. It's warfare. It is just, and this is where you have to go inward. Because unfortunately, because of the masses of how all of this works, and the security clearance that is involved with it, just in case instance, he did come forward and say, MK Ultra is like the top and nobody can talk about it. We know that they purposely buried this information. They have a history of burying this information. It is old as time, right? The victim versus the Kay, I think that was your wording, victim versus victimizer. It's either it's like a program, and trying to see yourself, trying to see yourself through a lens of not being hopeless or helpless, and tapping in with the inside and into your innate power that you were given as your birthright. That's your divine birthright, to have that connection. And the last thing that the program wants you to do is to succeed and tap into your potential, and to see yourself through an authentic lens of just how powerful you are as a creator, as you can transmute the things that have come against you. And you can take it from
Yes.
that pain into purpose and into a catalyst into your own journey. So, you've embarked on a very tremendous journey. I think that Dolores Cannon's teachings, they're amazing. So and she just seems to, she really just had a very real, down to earth way of relaying the information and sound information. But again, it's all within the inside. And what the QHHT does is it's tapping in.
She was a
to your,
beautiful soul. Yes.
she really was. She really was. So, out of all of the different certifications, because I know you said Reiki as well, and I did go down the Reiki path and holographic sound healing, and got certifications on that. It's just, it's beautiful. It's about, your hands hold a lot of healing, and that with Reiki, it's about, the touch. Yeah. And they, again, different pressure points within the body, and using your hands to channel the energy. I don't know if you know, when you touch your head, if it's hurting, it does feel better momentarily. If we could, but it's so much that is out there in terms of energy healing. Out of all of the different certifications that you pursued, which one is closest to your heart? I know you use a different variety in your healings and everything, but is there one that is more near and dear to you?
Well, actually, I would say that what has really become a part of my everyday is hypnosis and emotion code. I do that so frequently. I mean, I've recorded my own hypnosis because now I don't trust anything, like you do have to be very careful what you're listening to, and hypnosis is powerful. So I've recorded my own techniques and I listen to them when I'm falling asleep sometimes. And I do emotion code and body code for myself, as well as I do it, like my daughter will call me and she's having a meltdown and I don't know what's going on. She's 23. I don't know what's going on, Mom. I'm so confused. Would you like me to do some emotion code, body code remotely? Yes, please. And then, I don't need to be on the phone, right? No, you don't, as long as I have permission. And then I'll do emotion code and she'll text me and say, oh, thank you. I feel so much better. And so I do it all the time instinctively to help people. But when I'm working with someone, I always use hypnosis. QHHT is very specific. And at least for me, I take what Dolores taught and her very specific requirements to do the technique very seriously. And so I only do it in person. It takes many hours. And it really is, that's like a dedicated day to help someone heal that's very specific using that technique. But for classical hypnosis, that has been so valuable. That has just really informed pretty much everything. Because now that I know hypnosis, I can recognize when it's being levied against someone. I can see it, I can feel it, and I can identify it. And so that has made me so much more discerning. It's a huge tool for that. And I use it all the time, just in, any sort of energy work. In fact, I'm one of a new, a weekend class that I've just created is called Speaking Truth to Power. And it's designed to teach people how to activate their own authentic voice and how to use the fundamentals of hypnosis in their work for energy healers, because so many people do guided meditation. So many people, talk and they don't necessarily tap into what they can really do with their voice. The voice is a beautiful tool. That's one of our power centers. And so I just feel like, voice is so important, and I want to teach people how to use theirs so they can go out and magnify this across, the population. And so, it is hard to pinpoint, but those are the two that I really use as foundational for pretty much everything that I do.
So when you mentioned about the hypnosis and using your own voice, are you affirming statements of truth and then you just play it at bedtime? Can you describe an example of how you would use hypnosis on yourself?
So, okay, one example, a hypnosis technique that I created, whereas I just, I relax myself and then I go into my inner body system, into my endocrine system for, to the glands specifically, as well as the chakra that's associated with it, and to just bring in healing and clearing and balancing. And that's a really nice way to fall asleep, is to move through the different glands through the vagus nerve channel with the goal of balancing. So that's one thing that's been very helpful for me, and it definitely helps me sleep. But that's one example. Having learned hypnosis, I can, whatever it is that I want to do, I can create a process for that. And, working with people, hypnosis is very multi-purpose. For instance, my nephew was having panic attacks and was ending up in the ER with no discernible health problem that they could find. Of course, that is a separate problem in and of itself. We know how the allopathic medical system is. But aside from that, it was psychological. It wasn't physical, but it was affecting his entire life. He was afraid to fall asleep because he thought he would die. So I began working with him, and I did it. I used emotion code, and I created a hypnosis, which was all about, being confident in your body, knowing your body is strong, knowing that, you're clearing away any fears, any blockages. And so the hypnosis really helped to magnify the effects of the emotion code. And I worked with him over the course of 4 weeks. I went every Sunday to their house, and I sat on the floor, and I walked him through the process. It was about an hour and a half long. After 4 weeks, he was doing great. And he told me that it was life-changing. And sometimes this is one thing that I will also let people know, that especially if you're new and you haven't really done mindfulness techniques before, like if you're learning meditation really is hypnosis, especially a guided meditation. And the guiding helps you to focus so that you can relax. And that's the purpose of it. But if you're going to do that and you're new to it, just give yourself time and give yourself permission that it's hard to focus and that you just have to keep moving your attention back. I teach people that are new to meditation. So if you're working with someone, if you decide to work with someone, just be aware that part of what you need to do in the process is to give yourself a break, that it might not come easy. And as you work with someone too, rapport and trust in the process and in trust in the relationship that you have with the practitioner can take a little time to develop. But it will grow with time, and the effectiveness of whatever it is you're doing, what you're working on, is going to be increased by the level of trust that you begin to develop, again, in yourself, in the process, and in the person that you're working with.
Yes, and that was beautifully said, and great sound advice for the community too, to look in. There's just so much out there, and I invite you to just explore the different techniques. Dr. K mentioned quite a few today: emotion code, the emotional freedom tapping. Episode 3 of The Chosen Heroes goes over that as an example. Reiki is just running through, source energy through your hands on different points. It's a very gentle healing method as well. Dr. K's website is up on the screen. It's http://www.heal.me/Dr. Kenz, and that's Kenz. Also, the website for the Path of the Master's Mystery School is listed below, and that's www.pathofthemaster.info as well. You can learn more there. I want to put up a comment that just came up on the screen, Dr. K. Paul says that he is a targeted individual from England, and also a NLP and EFT certified. And it's strange how we who are qualified in this hypnosis to help others are being targeted with dark hypnosis that hurts others. Do you want to respond on that for Paul?
Yeah. Yeah. So it sounds like you're finding the same. That was the reason why I chose.
Yeah.
The signal just keeps cutting out. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes,
Okay.
I can hear you now.
You know what? I don't necessarily. I actually don't think that it's strange, because it's that desire to help and recognizing how powerful it is. It's, that was, again, it was me seeing something really wrong with the way people are thinking, and it can only be mind control that made me first decide I need to learn hypnosis. So absolutely. And NLP is great because that also utilizes recognition of, the body somatics. You bring in color, you bring in and do physical movements, as well as there's a lot more to it. But I don't find it strange at all. We
So
definitely, and that's why we want to help people. Why? Because we're empathetic.
So NLP is neuro-linguist programming, if I'm not mistaken.
Linguistic programming.
Linguistic programming, yes, that is what it stands for.
Right.
And then EFT is the emotional freedom technique that involves the tapping.
Yes.
To tapping.
Yes. Right. Yeah.
And again, it's
not strange at all. It doesn't surprise me. Yeah.
I think it's just because we are trying to transcend and transform from the program itself that keeps us more susceptible to entrainment. I think that was a very, wise move to learn about hypnosis, because part of how this program does is trying to do hypnosis, but more almost in a mind, like a brainwashing way of, making you second guess yourself, the gaslighting. Yep. For those that have the voice to skull, the auditory effect. It's all about just trying to, overwrite who you are, in a sense. And this is why it's so important to be able to catch the patterns of what's being used against you. To me, when I'm under heavy attack, I, of course, come here weekly and, and stand for the community and pray for the community. Of course, being under attack, I have to persevere and keep myself centered, knowing that I need to continue, diving in. Think of everything that has been done to you by the program and everything that led up to the program. And there's so many layers to this, and the conditioning and the programming that we've been subjected to over time. And then realizing and having the world implode and shattered that, our own government is allowing us to be attacked in this way, and nobody wants to own up to it. But again, a tale as old as time. This has been going on for many centuries of, it's abuse of power and control over others. And that's what happens when greed, power,
it definitely is,
lust, all of those things are taking the front seat. And this is how people become warped. and their motives and their agendas are very hungry and self-serving and self-centered, and we're in the crossfires of it. But we also have the power within to, you know, waiting for someone to write in and be the savior is not. I couldn't wait for that. I can't. We can't put, all our apples in one basket, that a person or a group is going to save us, but it's going to help us, right? We've got to tap into our own voice, speak our truth, what has happened to us, know and get centered in who we are, learn who we are. We forgot when we got targeted, it made us stumble and forget ourselves. But we can get back up and tap back in to reclaim our power. And while we're nurturing ourselves and empowering ourselves, and then we're fighting the good fight and spreading awareness, because our voice is very powerful. And that is why we got targeted to begin with, because of our voice. And maybe different, or because we had the lights. There's so many different things. There's so many different programs and how this works. But it's perfecting warcraft, where it's more about the neural war versus the battleground war. Because that's where things are coming. It's going to be, everything is controlled, as a system override on the mind. So then you've got to tap inward and do system override to bring you back to the surface.
Yes.
This has been a really enlightening
and one thing.
Go ahead. Yes.
Can I just want to say one other thing, that as I've listened to more and more of what's been shared by people who have woken up, realizing that they had been programmed, such as the kind of people that Laura Worley works with, survivors, Kathy O'Brien, Cisco Wheeler, those folks. Many people have been recognizing that while they were being mind controlled, they were being mind controlled through hypnosis to look at symbolism that is reverse. For instance, and I don't know if I mentioned this to you before, but they were essentially hypnotized to believe that the color blue is for little girls and the color red is for little boys. And it's really the reverse. So think about people that were chosen for that sort of mind control, such as the Montauk boys. And I always go back to them because they're such a perfect example of it. Those people were chosen because of their innate connection to their higher level awareness gifts, maybe more so than the average person. And so they were chosen deliberately. And so think about how powerful it is to use something like hypnosis to flip the script and to make them go out and project the inversions that they have been programmed to believe into the world. And we're seeing that, and that's playing out. And so, I mean, there's just so much to it, but there's so much that we can do when we take back our power. We recognize this is happening, and we try different things and discover the ways to combat it. Absolutely. Because, like we said before, once you know something, once you see something, you can never unsee it. You can never unknow it. And so therefore it can't harm you to the degree, and certainly not in the way that it was intended from that point on. And I think that's a very powerful place for us to be able to be standing from.
Absolutely. And I really do think that I really am resonating with the diving into what hypnosis is. I do think that a lot of what is done to us is in that frame, and along with, because when you're most vulnerable in a fear state, this is when your world is imploding with this, realizing that something is happening to you. in that very moment, that is where you are most susceptible to hypnosis and entrainment, and in the brainwashing that they try to do. It took me just seeing the patterns. I'm like, okay, there's patterns in this, and trying to dissect it. And I ask each and every one of you to recognize the patterns of what's happening to you, because most of everything that they want out of you is the reaction. When you feed the reaction of fear, panic, hopelessness, and the anger that this experience can really hone in on, that is marked as a spot of a trigger for you. And just like it's like vultures descending upon you. Once you are in a moment and you're having a spiral, right, then here comes the vultures circulating. They're like, oh, we got her, we got them. And they mark that down, and you will see the pattern. They will try to circle back around and do it again. But when you change and you shift that, you go inward and you sit with it, and you start asking yourself the question, okay, what is going on here? Am I over, do I need to, get outside, do a reset? They don't want you to have to sit there and help yourself in that moment, right? You got to get yourself out of it just as quick as you got back in it, and time will help you to do it. And I know it sounds overly simplified, but it does take time and it does take persistence. But you will start to see the patterns and the tricks, because then if they don't get a reaction out of you the next time on what gave them that you're talking about technology. It's going to circle back around. Yes, there can be live interaction with the handlers of it and such, but then they're going to try something new or something worked before that they hadn't hit on in a while. You've got to recognize what the angles are on this, because it really is. It's about your reaction. And they don't want the positivity reaction. They want the negative. They want to get you in grief and suffering and hopelessness and lack and fear and suppressed and victim. This is where it thrives. This is what fuels it. And the kryptonite to it is your healing, shifting your energy, embracing your self-empowerment and worth, and seeing yourself through an authentic lens, not the one that they want you to believe.
Yeah. So true. Right on.
This has been a great discussion, and I do hope that
I'm sorry, I had to move.
That's okay. We had someone thanking you for your advice, Dr. K. I reset daily with reformer Pilates and dance. So again, that's that creativeness and moving the energy and the flow, and to make room for the good to come forward. And to something that makes you feel good. You have to take time for yourself and not let this experience defeat you.
Right.
Well, this has been great. And again, everybody, Dr. K's information is up on the screen. And this broadcast is going to be on X, YouTube, and Rumble. And Dr. K, I'll send you the links for that as well. Any final words that you would like to share with the audience before we go, Dr. K?
I'm sorry that I moved around a lot. Just, renew your determination that you are going, and nothing is going to stop you. And that was something that really drove me forward. And I feel like it was that driving force that helped to fuel me coming out of and not wallowing and being stuck in any of the fear, that was really trying. And so that it is the thing. Fear really is so suppressing. And so you have to do whatever it takes to let yourself get out of that. And I'm sorry that I had such terrible signal. I had kept to keep moving around to try to get a better signal.
No worries. No worries. I mean, there was some delay, but your words were coming through, sometimes a little bit delayed. But
That's good.
the message came through well, and it was strong and very empowering. And
Oh, good.
we
Good.
all have the ability to tap in. I know it seems like at times that there's just no options, but that's when you have to just, go
Right.
inward and connect with God and just ask, to guide you, to what would help you. Again, asking yourself, you're in a quiet space, as quiet as you can. And then just internally those questions and see what your body reveals to you. Sometimes you'll get a memory, and maybe it's something that you need to dive into. Maybe there's some healing there that you need to release. Again, all of these different techniques are about, helping you come back into your self-empowerment and know who you truly are and not what you're led to believe. I really do feel strongly. And this is the way that I choose to look at it, is that there's so many people asleep in this world that have absolutely zero idea that this can happen to them, just like it's happened to us. And yes, we get labeled crazy. Yes, we get labeled conspiracy theorists, but we all know that the amount of people that this is happening to, there is no deniability when we are all exhibiting the same type of symptoms and reportings. And again, these are tactics that are being thrown at us. But if we can start looking through the lens of if this is a global introduction to this, if that's where it's going, like, I'm not saying that, God can move the mountains, but we need to focus on our healing and our self-empowerment at this time, because other people are going to be subjected to this. And it's coming until a whistleblower. God's making moves, a data bank breach with all of this information on our torture coming to fruition. I stand on that. I see it. I visualize it. Visualization is very important, along with prayer and knowing warfare prayers and spiritual warfare prayer. I know without a doubt it's going to come up to a point, because more and more people are being subjected to it, that God is working and moving within someone and stirring the light up within them, and they're going to come forward, and it's going to be in such a grandiose way that there can't be any deniability. Now, they may just do a blanket statement of, okay, it may be a shift in blame of somewhere else to deflect it off of them. It doesn't matter. What we need is for it to come out. And by sitting down and not saying anything and making sure that you're getting information out there, that doesn't help. We just need to work together in awareness in spreading this. And so that others that this is happening to right now, and they don't even know what it is, and they're going into that first stage, that they have something out there to latch on to help them. It's like a lifeline. See yourself as an anchor, that when this is happening to others, that we are those pillars that are anchored in and knowing the truth that this weaponization, that, and of all of this technology can be used on civilians, innocent civilians, including children. If we don't take a stand now, there is no future. The children will not have a future if we don't raise our voice and tap into our personal power. So we have to rise up and step up and fight this battle. And, this is what we have to do. Yeah. I'm very passionate about this. So I went.
Right.
I believe we all have the power to do this, and we're going to get there. But in the meantime, as we're doing our activism and we're getting the information out there and we're speaking our truth, we are empowering ourselves in the process too. We're going to lay down the label of victim, and we're going to be that warrior, that victor in this.
Yep.
You know, we're going to reclaim our power, our birthright, our mantle that we were born into, not the ones that this false narrative that they want us to buy in that says that we're disempowered and that nobody cares. We know the truth. Well, again, thank you so much, Dr. K. This has been a pleasure. And as always, community, I continue to pray for you. And again, you know, we are strong. We have the numbers. Our voices are powerful. You are powerful. No matter, you know, what you are led to believe by these programs, you are a powerful being. And we will rise above this and strengthen numbers, and we will see the end. We have to believe it and know it, because God is going to make it happen. We cannot continue under a label of transparency and truth where it is a false label, and that is where the light can move into the darkness, because it was put out there. We are in a state of truth and transparency, but yet here all of us are under government victimization, having technologies, directed energy used against our bodies, and that is where he has the power to move in this. But we have to know who we are, and we have to do our part, and we've got to co-create with the divine to see us through this storm. All right. Thanks so much, Dr. K. Appreciate you being here, and God bless each and every one of you. And it was a great opportunity, and thank you for being a guest today.
Thank you so much. This was wonderful.
Oh, thank you. God bless everyone, and have a blessed rest of your day. Thank you. Tune in next week.